In the last year, the branch has completely changed the way it records butterflies and who processes them. And tonight we're going to look at several of the issues arising from that. So first off, I will look at the verification process as it now is working, and it is working well. I will then review the branch's data website, which I've done in the past, and I will now include the results from 2024, which will be new. I'm not addressing any of the 2025 results as yet. When I finish, Bill Downey will take over and look at the way we're using those results to enhance conservation of butterflies in the county, and also how we interact with other related organisations. So this is me. I'm not a biologist by background at all. And 2 years ago, I launched a new database website. And this essentially is the third presentation in that series. But what has changed is I'm now the county butterfly recorder for data management for the branch. Now, it's not always been the case, but in recent years, butterfly conservation has defined the roles and responsibilities for county recorders. They recognise that expertise in both databases and entomology is rare, not unknown, but rare. So they define really two sorts of county butterfly recorder, and the county butterfly recorder for verification is one, and they know about butterflies and they do the identification, for example, of difficult species. Whereas the other county butterfly recorder, which is me, I deal with the data to do with the recording of butterflies. And we are both aided by helpers known as verification assistants. So this is our new team. We've been working since September last, and we've been looking at the consolidation of the county data, and I'll come on to what that's about in just a moment. We've also had to verify the 53,000 outstanding iRecord records, and that's been quite a task, but we have now completed that. We need to prepare the data for submission to butterfly conservation, and we'll see how, again, the data flows to them from us in just a moment. The website has had to be updated, of course, with all the new data for 2024. And we will be trying to verify records pretty much as soon as they appear. So here is the diagram that Butterfly Conservation produce for the overall data of, or the overall flow of butterfly record data. So right in the middle is the county recorder or the county recorder team. And they maintain the Orange County database, but they get data in from various sources. So up in the top left, we see, for example, the Garden Butterfly Survey, the UK BMS, which is Transects, etc. iRecord Butterflies, which is a popular app for recording. And other records that come in through that iRecord route. For example, BTO bird track data comes in there, and iNaturalist data. We ignore the moth recording. We are talking here only about butterflies and not about moths. Moth recording in the county is something different and separate. All that data appears in a big bucket there, the Indicia database, and that is essentially what we're dealing with when talking about iRecord. So we interact with that, we receive the data in, and we verify the data when it's correct. Other data we do get is the big butterfly count, and you see that doesn't go into iRecord, that comes separately. And also people that send us records, either as individual records or in a submitted spreadsheet. That's perfectly possible. If you want to do that, please contact us and we'll tell you what to do. Then looking at what happens to the county records, those we submit to Butterfly Conservation on an annual basis, around about the spring of each year, and that is then fed into the national recording. Now, at the bottom of the screen are the LERCS, the Local Environmental Record Centres, and we have two of those. We have ESPIC for the County of Surrey, and GIGL, GIGL, for the Green Space Information for Greater London, which is from the London part of our Vice County. And on the far right, we see those are passed on to the sort of national bodies that are interested in data. iRecord is playing a central role in what we do these days. It receives and it stores safely all the data, and there's easy data entry into that. There's a website which you can enter data quite straightforwardly, and particularly these days there are phone apps that enable you to record data in the field whenever you want. There are also mechanisms in there for the validation and verification of data. These features are not available to ordinary users, but they are for the recorder teams. When we have a team of people, of course, we need a database that can support multi-user working. And this is clearly not possible in old-fashioned systems where the database was essentially single user. So for teams, that's essential. The iRecord mechanisms also interact with the recorders in a GDPR-approved manner, and it protects sensitive data like garden locations, people's emails, etc. And that is, again, essential in these days. The county data is now going to be managed through iRecord rather than maintaining a separate database of our own. And we have a lot of iRecord data. So I have a little animation here showing the 900,000 records which have gone into iRecord that we use. This data is, most of it anyway, is actually from the transects. And the transects, of course, are at single locations. So what you see in this animation is data that appears in the same spot over and over again. But it's still an impressive display for the data for other places. Quite remarkable, really. In total, we've got a sort of roughly speaking, 1.2 million records, which cover 4.5 million butterflies. That's a fair number. There are two processes that go on here. There's data validation. So are all the fields in what you submit correct? So are the dates in the correct format? Are the grid references in the correct formats, etc.? And then there comes the sort of essential part, which is the verification of that data. Is this record a correct record of what you had seen? Our policies for verification, we try to follow the informal national guidelines and GDPR, of course. Records get accepted if they are potentially native or migrant species. And we also accept records for recognised aggregate species. And in particular, I'm thinking here of small and Essex skippers, which are difficult for most people to tell apart. Or they are indeed difficult to tell apart. In doing this verification, we make no judgment whatever about how butterflies got to the site upon which they're recorded. We don't get into the legalities of either the species itself or the site. Some simple iRecord record requirements. Data should be from a single occasion, with the maximum number of a particular species seen at once at that location. So they're not aggregations of, let's say, all the butterflies you've seen at the site over a week. That's not how iRecord works. We want records which are to a monad, which is a 1 kilometre grid square or better. and we would like photos for unusual species or species in unusual locations, principally away from their normal distribution. One thing I particularly want to draw people's attention to is the need, when you're using phone apps, to ensure that the location in which the record is made is the location of the sighting. We see in the data we get a number of times we have a record for a butterfly which is clearly somewhere else. Indeed, they have told us that it is somewhere else, but the grid reference is more likely to be their own home, which is where they've gone out, taken records in the field and come back and then entered them at home. If you do that, you've got to make sure that you've got the right map reference. The automatic ones are where you hit the button for "this is a record." The text for the location just needs to be a simple street name maybe, or even a village or a farm or a park, anything really, so that when we see your grid reference on a map, which iRecord displays to us, that we can look at the text and say, yes, that text does describe that location. So I want to move on now to look at the website. In this quick review of the Maps from Stats website, really two purposes. One is to explore some of the new features which are available. Some have arisen during 2024 and some are new relatively recently. And we'll also have a look at the data which we have for 2024 now, because it'll probably be the first time that people will have had a chance to see that. I should add here that I'm using an offline version of the website which doesn't have any 2025 data in it, just to keep it clean. So the website itself gets updated reasonably regularly with this year the 2025 entries. So that would include the transects of the gardens and other data as it arrives. First off, we notice over here the dates now are 1990 to 2024, so we've extended back in time as well as including the 2024 data. This seems to be sensible. The data all exists, and we should use that. It gives us a longer perspective on the stats which are there. There's a new homepage which we're seeing here. It's quite straightforward. There's a table down here of the butterflies in descending order of the number we have in our records. So this is all years combined. Right down at the bottom there's a total, which is pretty big. We have 1.2 million records of nearly 4.5 million butterflies. There are some real rarities. Others, like the meadow brown here, we're 1.3 million of them. They're not always, of course, the same. They're not always different butterflies. If you do a transect, for example, you will quite often see the same butterfly each week, but that's how it goes. The species tab here, the sort of what used to be the sort of home page. This has a couple of new species this year. By extending back to 1990, the pearl-bordered fritillary and the Duke of Burgundy now makes an appearance. And they appear down here. So Duke of Burgundy shows the two distinct populations. The black circles in the North Downs were the original Surrey butterflies, which unfortunately are now extinct. Over here in the far east, there are new introductions, unofficial introductions, which are making a colony in sort of Hutchinson's Bank, Chapel Bank. Their occupancy is not many monads in either case. Abundance, there seems to be more now than there used to be. Of course, going back pre-1990, there may have been a lot more Duke of Burgundies. I have no way of knowing. And the flight weeks, etc. The same as all the other species, so I won't spend any more time on that. I also won't look at the priority species. I know Bill will want to go into discussion over some of those at least, and the conservation work we do on them, partly based on the statistics we have here. Likewise, the trends are just linear trends. They can be very misleading in places, particularly over such a long period of time. The main bulk, of course, comes under Transects here. Most of the records that we have are, in fact, from Transects. 2024 is my last year in this version of the site. So we'll have a quick look at the 2024 results. The sites for 2024 here, there were 158, an incredible achievement, really. That was just 2 up on last year. The plan was not to have many more. We really do have enough, but these were the ones that were walked last year. The species here, so for each of the sites, how many species did they see? Hutchinson's Bank comes top. They do, of course, have a little bit of help there. But there were 5 here tied in second place with 31 species. That is actually a little bit down this year, perhaps not surprisingly. There are odd ones here. The red ones indicate the most species ever seen at that site. But unfortunately, this year, all of the ones that are red, in other words, all the ones that have a record high count, are in fact new transects. So almost by definition, they had the highest count. Presence. So tying top with 154 Transect sites each, Gatekeeper, Meadow Brown. Perhaps not at all surprising. And the rest of the statistics here tail off right down. Top counts. So this is the maximum number seen on a single outing. 398 marbled whites. That's quite a spectacle. That was at Box Hill Viewpoint. Interestingly, overtaking the Meadow Browns and Gatekeepers. These statistics are just moving on slightly from last year. The number of walks undertaken in the year. This shows the number of walks taken every day in the year. There were some very bad weeks, like week 4 here. The weather was terrible, as this period in the middle of June here was poor. The days here start from the beginning of the Transect week. So it just happened last year. The Transect week started on a Monday. This year, the bottom day will be a Tuesday, or is a Tuesday, because the Transect weeks always start on the 1st of April, no matter which day of the week that is. And the weekly totals. So, well, this is large. Yeah. So top was Brimstone here. These are ordered by the date first seen. And if I make this quite a bit smaller, that's probably now too small to read, but you can probably get the impression that the line roughly trends down here, showing the later butterflies in the year as they come out. This table is most useful during the year when you can see what butterflies have actually been seen on transects. This is the total count of the butterflies on those transects. Okay, so that's the end of the buttons for 2024, but of course the general ones have been updated. This one is very tricky, particularly on a phone. It's now very wide. It shows the number of times each transect has been walked, and there is a very long list of those, because of course some transects are not now walked and replaced by others. Get that back to something sensible. Right. The Details tab is particularly interesting. This is new. I want to select a transect. We'll try an S. So if I hit T, we'll get down to T at the bottom here, and let's say Streatham Common here. So first off is Streatham Common has 25 species seen on it in all years. And there's a little map of the transect. This is not an invitation to walk that transect. Transect walkers are assigned by the Transect coordinator, Bill Downey. And if you want to walk a transect, you contact him, or if you know the transect walker, you may be able to arrange something with them. But just don't feel that because you now know where the routes are, you can just go and do them. That doesn't work. Underneath, there's the list of species and when they were last seen on that transect. So in 2024, there were 20 species seen, and here they are. And then 2023, 2, 1. Poor small tortoiseshells doing very badly in Surrey, not seen there since 2020. The bit I skipped over, this is a spreadsheet, which opens when you click it, and needs making larger, which contains a sort of summary of all the species seen and how many in each year. So 2018 onwards. This transect obviously was only started in 2018. And there is a tab that has more detailed data. Again, needs a bit of enlargement. So there's the species, and then over here, for each transect week, there are how many butterflies of that species were seen. So if I use the little pull down on the common name, let's say orange tip, because they'll be near the beginning of the year, and now I get a plot of the years on the left-hand column, and then what weeks they were seen. That's quite a useful facility. This has been available sort of privately for about a year, but now this is publicly accessible. So that's that details tab. The species seen per week. The blue is the best week in the year. So here we are, 2024. Week -2 actually was the best week of any previous year. The top weeks in the year are here, 34 in August and the same in week 17, 22nd July. So the season was late. Most years have their peaks earlier than that. And then things tail away in October. And there's a chart there that shows it, where the 2024 is the sort of olive line that traces its way. Not, well in touch with every other year, really. Maybe last year was not as dreadful as it was first seen. The totals are the total number of butterflies, so it's just the same but multiplied up by the but by the number of butterflies. And in fact, April the 8th, week of April the 8th, week 2 was actually the best week 2 we've ever had. But of course, some were poor. I see this week 4 again was 169. That's dreadful compared with, well, often more than 2,000. The season was late. The best figure here, 19,900, was well after most years have had their peak. And then again here, the chart of the same numbers. And finally, the summaries. Skip the table, go straight to the plots. So the transect numbers, as I said before, were slightly up just by 2. The number of walkers was up very slightly, although the number of walkers does include combinations of walkers. Walks were a little bit down, but not hugely, possibly weather-related because people just couldn't do walks in some weeks. Butterfly numbers were down, but notice they were still up on the 3 years previous to the last year, which was exceptionally good. Butterflies per site. This is probably a better measure. Again, this year was certainly in touch with a lot of previous years, even if it was poorer than the 2017 to 2019 period. And butterflies per walk, the number of butterflies people actually see on average, again, in touch with the year before last, but otherwise a little bit down from last year. So this has been a very quick review of the transects. Gardens, the Garden Butterfly Survey. This year, the number of gardens partaking was down. This followed the national trends, which also showed the numbers were well down. I don't really have time to go into all of that. Species is new. So this is the a number of gardens seeing a particular species. So small white and large white were the top of the list there, at least over here in total. Perhaps not surprising, they're seen as garden butterflies, whereas, I don't know, marbled whites maybe not. And dingy skippers and chalk-hill blues certainly not. There were very, very few clouded yellows in Surrey last year. And the summary there with plots of the number of species seen per garden. Okay, the BBC is in fact the big butterfly count of 2024. I was sent the information for that, but of course it only covers a certain number of species, and it only runs for a few weeks in the summer. So this data is not added into all the other data we have in the county. It's an entirely separate data set. I think its main use is nationwide to get a national picture of the butterflies of the country. But nevertheless, useful for Surrey too. And here's a plot of all the big butterfly counts entered. The size of the circles indicates the number of species seen in that area. The areas being 100 metre square, so reasonably small. Now then, that's brings me to the end of the big butterfly count. These others, the wider countryside butterflies survey and the Richmond Others and About, are all pretty much the same as they were before. Do go away after the talk and have a good look around. And you will, of course, also see some 2025 data. So I'm going to draw my part of this to an end now and hand over to Bill to talk about conservation and the use of these numbers in informing what conservation we do. So thank you very much from my perspective anyway. Questions and answers will come after Bill's session.
Well, thank you very much, Ken. When I became the Transect coordinator back in 2015, I contacted one of our walkers to query some records, and I got this quite amazed reply back from her. She said, "What?" She said, "Do you mean that somebody actually looks at these records which I send in?" And since then, I've always thought how important it is to convey to volunteers that their recording has a purpose, because a lot of work goes into producing these records, a lot of work, and it is a lot of time and a lot of commitment. And we want to get the best use out of these records that we can, to exploit them to the full extent that we are able to. So as Ken said, the data that we produce after verification goes into the county records, and this is then sent to BC to form part of the national data set. This is, I think, quite well known amongst Transect walkers, and is assumed to be the main purpose. But what recorders, I think, are less aware of is how the records are used locally. If you look at designations for protected areas in Surrey, triple SIs, for example, the vast majority of the designations are for plant species. And there's a reason for that, because it is the botanists who produce the vast majority of records. They are far and away the most organised group of recorders. And I think what I realised is that what we need to do is to follow the lead of the botanists and inculcate a greater sense of, inculcate a real recording culture into the branch. Fortunately now, we've got much better tools, particularly the iRecord Butterflies app for field recording, and we've made great progress in the tools that we've got available to us. And through encouraging recording by providing quick feedback to those submitting records, we really want to grow the amount of recording that we do in our area. And this is important for the recording community in Surrey in ways that I shall now explain. So Ken has already mentioned the local environmental record centres, the LERCS. The country is covered by these bodies, which act as collecting points for records of all different types of taxa, which are verified by experts. And these then support local planning by providing data for developmental control and local plans. And they also make data available to environment consultants who are working with developers. Although there's no absolute protection for them, unfortunately, this is a political decision. So VC17 divides very neatly into two areas, and this is reflected in the two LERCS which we deal with. In our area, we have SBIC, the Surrey Biodiversity Information Centre, which is in Surrey, and we have GIGGLE, which stands for Green Space Information for Greater London, and that's in London, of course. All of the verified records which we produce are downloadable by these two organisations. They're downloadable from the Indicia database. A more difficult problem that we'll face will be getting data sharing agreements so that we can access any butterfly data coming from them. At the moment, there is no data sharing agreement with SBIC, and although there are not many butterfly records that they have that we don't, we do want to get the Space for Nature records from them, as the Surrey Wildlife Trust is now really going to produce more records via that means. There is a data sharing agreement with GIGGLE, although it's very, very old and it needs to be updated. So we're working on this. Again, there's not that many records that would come our way, but we do want to get the records from the butterfly group in Richmond Park, certainly. So I sit on the Biodiversity Working Group of the Surrey Nature Partnership. This is a working group which is basically information sharing on conservation issues. Another working group on which I sit for BC is the Surrey Local Sites Partnership. And this is a body which establishes and administers the local wildlife sites system in Surrey. These have always been referred to as Sites of Nature Conservation Importance, SNCIs. In London, these are known as SINCs, Sites of Importance for Nature Conservation. It's a very English way of doing things, that you have things which are substantially the same, basically called different things. These local nature sites do not have statutory status, as do SSSIs. And again, there is no absolute protection for them, unfortunately, but they do have to be taken into account by planners and the planning system. This group, the Surrey Local Sites Partnership, is primarily responsible for site selection and review against a published set of selection criteria. And the document, this is the front page of the document which you see on this slide, is the latest revamp of this. The butterfly part was written by Gail Jeffcoat and me. So in terms of butterflies, on the criteria document, there are 3 criteria which are important. The first one is List A, which is sites supporting a population of butterfly species in List A, which are our most important and endangered species. And then the second one is a significant population within a species in List B, which I'll show you in just a minute. And I'm asked to adjudicate on what is a significant population. And then the third criteria is any site that regularly supports an assemblage of more than 21 butterfly species. So that is not a high threshold to meet. So wherever we have 21 species present on a site, that will fit the criteria. So this is List A. the butterfly species of importance within Surrey. So in list A we have the wood white, the grayling, silver-studded blue, the Adonis blue, and the wall. I have put the wall in because I think that there's a reasonable chance that it may return to Surrey. We've had some quite definite sightings in the last couple of years. So wherever these species are present, that site will immediately qualify it for local wildlife site status. And then we have the list B, which is the grizzled skipper, the silver-spotted skipper, and I'm just going to go across the slide here. So the white admiral, small blue, dark green fritillary, dingy skipper, purple emperor, brown hairstreak, and white letter hairstreak. So that's everything which we included in the document. So this is a map of all the designations currently in political Surrey. This is not VC17. This is what the county of Surrey looks like today, some of which is in VC17 and some of it is not. Special protection areas you can see are marked with the dark green border. Triple SI sites are in light green, and the SNCIs, that's the local wildlife sites, are in turquoise. And as you can see, there are a lot of them. They cover a lot of land. There's also a backlog of candidate sites, which are what we are considering at the moment. And if John Madden is on the call, a lot of these are in Tandridge. Now, some of the candidate sites are because of botanical or bat or dormice interest, etc. But on lots of the candidate sites, and I'll give you a few examples, Putnam Down, Young Street Verge, Dawsdean, Wellington Meadow. These are all sites where we have quite significant butterfly records, and we're able to contribute to the case for the designation of these sites. So this is why I say that the records we generate are of great value to the conservation community in Surrey. Now, you will also have heard about local nature recovery strategies, and this is part of the initiative to halt the decline in nature by the year 2030. I understand that there is a lot of scepticism about this, and it's scepticism which I also share. I think it's very unclear that it will do this, but it is written into law. And as well as identifying habitats and their benefit to humans, the LNRS also follow the Lawton principles of bigger, better and more joined up, which is good. And the Act also contains targets on species abundance with the aim to halt the decline in biodiversity by 2030. So the overall oversight of local nature recovery strategies lies with DEFRA, but this is farmed out across the country to various responsible authorities. And in Surrey, this is Surrey County Council. So SCC, Surrey County Council, have come up with a list of species. This is the species list, initially suggested by Natural England, but the process is being managed by Mike Waite of the Surrey Wildlife Trust. Although the list has gone out to consultation with groups and stakeholders, and obviously in terms of Lepidoptera to us. So there is a requirement. There is a requirement in the Act for a description of the key charismatic species, which is what is known as the long list. And from the long list is extracted a short list of species which are most in need of bespoke action plans and which need to be prioritised. Right, so this next slide shows the shortlist that has been developed by Natural England and by Mike Waite. So just to be absolutely clear, we have not written this, although I am making comments about it. So the considerations for this shortlist have been any red list species, any native species which Natural England suggests as suitable for conservation translocation. Now, this is a controversial topic, obviously, but what it reveals here in this list is a desire to pick up on the sort of the zeitgeist for rewilding. So just going through this list, you can see that it has the pearl-bordered fritillary, the Duke of Burgundy, the wood white, the silver-studded blue, and the Adonis blue for butterflies. And in some cases, there are actions associated with these species. In terms of moths, the barred striped tooth, the straw bell, the pale shining brown, the heart moth, shoulder striped clover, fuscus flat body, and the Bettany case bearer. And you'll note there are various actions associated with these. If you look at the far right, you'll see that there are actions associated with some of these species. Now, this is not the list which I would have produced, and it has butterflies, the pearl-bordered fritillary, the Duke of Burgundy, which we're fairly sure are not going to come back to Surrey. Certainly in the case of the pearl-bordered fritillary, I think that is a lost cause. I've actually run these past Stephen Lofting, who I think is quite dismissive about some of these. The big gap here is the grayling, about which I'm talking to Mike Waite about. And, my argument is that there is bespoke action which can be taken for the grayling, whereas with others, the pearl-bordered and the Duke of Burgundy, there's no chance we're going to get these back. So this is my final slide now, and this shows Denby's Land Barn, the Transect at Denby's Land Barn, the history since 2002. I put it in because it's one of my Transects. And we've got this. We've got much better graphical illustrations of the data which we produce now. And I'd like to I'd like to commend Ken really for the work that he's done, because I most certainly could not have done that. We've got far better data now than we ever have in the past, and our intention is to go on exploiting this in whatever ways we can, and in whatever ways are most effective. And all of this data is now downloadable from the website, and this is the type of material which we can pass across to rangers, to organisations, in this case the National Trust, and it's of great use to them in their management of the site. It gives them information about about how the site is managed, and it's also very useful to them if they're seeking to find sources of funding. They need to back up any claims with hard data like this. So that's the end of the presentation part of this talk, this Zoom talk, and Ken and I are now here to answer your questions. Thank you very much.